Hey there! Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive, both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 256 is titled, Build a Thriving Music Studio with Dr. Katherine Emeneth. Founded in Dallas, Texas in 1996, the Katherine Emeneth Music Company is renowned for its international service for flutists of all levels. The Katherine Emeneth Music Company is your premier resource for everything flute. Their selection of flutes, piccolos, low flutes, and head joints from dozens of makers is truly remarkable. Also, their offerings of sheet music, instrumental accessories, teaching, and health resources are unmatched. Their in-house staff offers an unparalleled level of expert knowledge and personal service with an in-house repair staff certified in all major brands. Follow the Katherine Emeneth Music Company through Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter to be updated with the latest news. Check out their website at fluteforyou.com. The Katherine Emeneth Music Company is truly your one-stop flute shop. Hey, Flute 360er, welcome back to another episode. I am so pumped to have the one and only Dr. Katherine Emeneth into the studio today because we get to talk about flute studio building, recruiting students, recruiting amazing students into your studio where you can thrive as an educator and really building an environment where your kids and adult students or amateur students have an amazing place to learn and grow both as a musician and as a person. And so who better to talk about studio building than Katherine? And many of you may know that she and I talked through a former episode, and that was episode 183, and we talked all about music business tips. So if you have your CEO cap on and you want more information about how to be a thriving musicpreneur, I would definitely check out that episode because it was stellar. But without further ado, Katherine, it is so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for carving out time for us, and I can't wait to pick your brain.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you so much for having me. And it's great to be here to talk about my favorite thing with a good friend and also with all of your listeners too. So thanks for the invitation.
Oh, for sure. Anytime. And that's what makes it that much more fun to talk with great colleagues and great friends. And it's because we get to talk about real information, valuable information from this very intimate, casual place. And I think there's not a better place to be than within that space. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Because what we talk about here is real. It is our authentic selves, and it is our real, true stories of how we've done things and how we've helped people or how we've built things ourselves. So I totally agree that this is a great way to have these conversations.
And for the listeners out there too, here's my one tip for today is build a mastermind around yourself if you need supporters in your life. And the reason why I say that is because Katherine and I have been in a musicpreneur mastermind these past 3 months, and we have learned a lot among ourselves and our friends. And we're talking about funnels and ads and social media and marketing. And so if you need that support being a musicpreneur, I highly recommend setting up a mastermind because Katherine and I are in a mastermind and we're getting to know each other that much better.
Absolutely. Having a community of people who are doing similar things or who are, in the same boat, and being able to talk to each other and being able to just float ideas past each other is so huge. And as private music teachers or music entrepreneurs or just musicians in general, as soon as you're out of school, it's very hard to have that community. So having a community of people to talk with and just, talk about work and ask for opinions and stuff is always a huge benefit.
Ooh, I like that word floating, to float
Yeah.
ideas, to and from each other. That's really smart. I like that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So before we get into how somebody goes about building up their own music studio, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself so they can get to know you that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from Georgia, the state. Then you might hear a little Southern accent in there, here and there. And I grew up in the Atlanta area, and I was in band and all of that, and didn't start taking private lessons until I was in the 8th grade. I was really bad when I was a youngster in middle school, and I was always last chair. And I just knew that private lessons would be a really great thing for me to do. So I started taking private lessons at the local music store from a saxophonist. And he was wonderful and great. And I loved him so much, but he could only take me so far. And so after we kind of outgrew him, we went to another private teacher. And then when I went into college to study music education, I was kind of like hit with a ton of bricks with things like recitals and like how to practice and some heavy repertoire that I had never been exposed to before. And it was kind of like shocking. And so I think that from that experience, that's where it started, laying the seeds for being a private music teacher, professional private music teacher, to really cultivate a community in my community where I grew up that was more than what I had experienced as a kid. And so from there, I mean, I'm super introverted. I was very shy all throughout school and everything. So it's taken a lot for me to be able to learn how to be a teacher and learn how to be confident in myself and my skills, which I feel like a lot of musicians are also that way, feeling very introverted. That's probably why we're attracted to music, because it's a lot of, time alone and honing our own craft and all of that. So I actually taught elementary general music for a year after I graduated with my bachelor's degree in music education. So I did a lot of ORF certification. I worked with kids. I had 600 kids a week that I saw. I had to lead an after-school chorus of 4th and 5th graders. And if you ever heard me sing, you'd be like, who let her do that? Are you kidding me? So I had to learn a lot of skills on the fly, like how to put an entire musical together for a 4th and 5th grade after school chorus that included props and included microphones and hiring a sound company and costumes and all sorts of things. So that's where I say I really learned how to teach, was actually in that year. And so then after that experience, I discovered that while I like teaching kids, I don't like teaching kids in large numbers. So I went back to school to try to figure things out, like many musicians do, because once we have a taste of that real world, it can be very scary to not know quite sure where we fit in. Throughout all of my studies, I've always taught private lessons. Sometimes they look like teaching a kid 4 private lessons in a practice room at the university, School of Music. Sometimes it's been in the smelly marching band uniform closet at a high school during, August. But I've always taught lessons throughout my education. I went to the University of Washington for my doctorate degree, for my DMA in flute performance, with hopes of becoming the college flute professor, as many of us want to do. And I literally checked every single box that we were supposed to check in order to get a job as a flute professor. I started an international summer festival. I performed international flute competitions. I created my own studio and did amazing types of outreach work. I did everything that we were supposed to do. And I got into the final 3 for 7 different college interview positions and then never landed it. And I got so depressed and so sad. And my husband and I were really frustrated with not knowing where we were going to live. We did not know if we were going to live in Kansas or if we were going to live in Chicago. We had no idea where we were going to live. And I came to the realization during my doctorate that I don't necessarily need that title. As long as I'm teaching, as long as I'm playing, and as long as I'm contributing to our music community, that is really, truly all that I needed to do. So we moved back to the Atlanta area, and I honestly grieved my dream job for a couple of years. And that is something that many people do, is you work so hard for so long to try to achieve this one thing that you think is going to be the answer to all of your problems and all of your questions. And then when you decide that that's no longer your dream anymore, it takes a while to process that and to literally grieve that dream that you had. So after going through that process, I was ready to move on to the next phase. And I had been very irritated for many years that in music school, musicians were not taught entrepreneurial skills, things like how to start a studio, how to build a website, how to recruit students, how to market yourself. And I had to figure all that stuff out by myself. And I had to move and start studios 3 different times in 3 different parts of the country. And I got really irritated at that. And so at one NFA, like literally, this was the one that was like 2 days after I got married. Back in 2013, I presented a session on new in town, how to start a studio from scratch. And it was packed. There was standing room only. The people were sitting on the floor, and I could not believe it. And somebody came up to me and said, finally, a session that we can use that's not just another performance, that, you know, gives us real world skills of how to make a career out of this. And so the response from that was so amazing that I said, I need to share this information with the world. So as my mom would say, I had to put on my big girl panties, and I had to get brave with my introverted self, the little last chair 6th grader in middle school band with a mouth full of braces and orthodontic wear. And I had to, you know, say, okay, this is what the world needs from me. This is where I can make the biggest difference, is teach musicians how to make a full-time job without having to have a traditional career path, which is totally fine if you want to have a traditional career path. There's just other ways. And most people are too scared or don't feel like they understand how to create other options for themselves. So I started creating online programs for musicians to teach them how to build studios and how to make them thrive. And I've worked with about 150 private music teachers since then. And many of them, they send me messages all the time. I just bought my first house. Got one recently that was like, this is the first summer I felt stable and not like have to like scrape and scrimp all summer until the school year starts. And you know, I was able to quit my full-time job, and now I can just teach privately. And so that is incredibly fulfilling for me, and definitely my calling to help other people to do this. At the same time, I teach privately. I have 18 private students. The youngest one is Lois. She's in the 4th grade, and she is super cute. I taught her how to tap her foot and play her flute at the same time last week. And my oldest student is actually a college student who I taught since 9th grade, and she's home for the summer. She's majoring in music, and we're working on memorizing Tafnell and Gobert EJ6 right now. That's her summer project. So I teach the whole breadth of students. I have a full-blown summer camp that I do every summer. This year we had 76 flutists in the community join us for a week of fun. And I do all sorts of stuff in my own community and speak at universities and just really help musicians to navigate this career path.
That's phenomenal. I could go down probably 100 different rabbit holes with you from that story alone.
Yes.
So I will try my very best to pick one of the rabbit holes at a given time. But no, let's go back. I'm so glad you brought this up about your pivoting story. Literally, and you know this because we've been in cahoots with each other in prior conversations, our pivoting stories are almost identical. Man, that season can be so dark. And you said, I was so depressed. And I just kind of want to highlight that just for a hot second, because when I go to flute festivals or I talk with my 360ers, they want out of their current situation, or they want to build a new situation for themselves. But they will tell me time and time again, Katherine, I don't even know what step one is. And a lot of it is being courageous, I think, and believing in yourself and saying, this is what I want, and figuring out what that is so you can start working towards a new goal. And it may be scary because that wasn't the initial plan, but that's okay, because sometimes those blessings may look different and may be different. They're right around the corner. And just because you may not be on that traditional path of being the full-time tenure track flute professor or have a position in the orchestra, it doesn't mean that you necessarily failed. It just
Oh,
means
yeah.
that the cards fell a different way. It just means that you get to be really creative and you get to have this amazing opportunity. Yeah, you were thrown down, right? And you feel like the rug was pulled out from underneath your feet. But what a great opportunity to say, okay, this is a time for me to stop and maybe even reinvent myself, right? And to get up and
Absolutely.
have that courage to say, like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, it's not panning out the way I initially wanted it to pan out, but that's okay because I get to reinvent myself. I get to be curious and look around. And what you mentioned in E183, look around and notice the breadcrumbs
Mhm.
and get really excited about my new future.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I think that for many people, especially folks who are a couple years out of school, they're very nervous about pivoting because they don't want to let their former teachers down. They don't
Hmm.
want to let their parents down because they feel like these people have invested so much into their education and to their, career path that it can kind of feel a little gross when you are changing. And I always just remind folks that they just want you to be happy and successful, right? That's
Mm.
our all of our former teachers and our family, most of those people who are very supportive, if you have that supportive network, they just want you to be happy. And so you're not actually letting them down. You're just choosing a different route along the same umbrella, using the skills that you have learned from your education as well as from your family unit to change directions. So yeah, it can be very scary to not know what that next step is, and it can be a little tricky too because you're worried about what everybody else thinks, right? So
Mm.
like if you stop pursuing the path, does everybody think you're a failure? Do you think you're a failure? I remember walking around my house when I was like, after I got yet another rejection letter and be like, I'm a failure. I'm such a failure. And my husband and my mom, because we were living with my parents at that time, were like, you're not a failure, you know? And it takes a while to be able to say, you know what? I am not a failure. I'm doing something that is actually pretty darn cool and pretty unique. And I am helping other people. And once you get to that point of actually seeing your work pay off, then it becomes easy for you to say, yeah, I made the right decision.
That's amazing. And yeah, it can feel like you are a failure in that season just because, like you said, and I felt the same way during my pivoting season. It's because you worked 20 years to get that doctoral degree, or you worked 20 years, through different schooling and programs and competitions, and you had this end goal in mind. And that end goal didn't pan out, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I failed. But it's
Yeah.
just a small shift. And for me, it was realizing like, oh, I can pivot and it's just a few degrees. I can
Yeah.
still teach collegiate flutists during their
Hmm.
gap year between college and grad school. I can still design festivals. I can still put out my research out into the community. And just because it's not necessarily in their four walls, in the four academic walls at, blank small town Illinois,
Hmm.
doesn't mean that I can't do the same thing in my own four walls in Dallas, Texas. And
Exactly.
actually, I feel more fulfilled, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Hmm.
I never got to hold that position, but I think actually I'm more fulfilled on this side of things because
Yeah.
I get to be my own boss. I get to
Exactly.
decide what programs I get to put together and who I want to work with. And that to me is so fulfilling and so extraordinary because I get to work with musicians across the globe. And I know
Yeah.
you get to do that in some capacity as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I feel like really truly that I'm making more of an impact with more people than had I chosen
Mm.
to go down this traditional path where it's just like a smaller group of people, and it's still an impact. It's just different. But yeah, you're totally right. We're doing the same thing that we would in the traditional job sense, but we're doing it in our own way and doing it in a way that is very individualized and specific to us. We don't necessarily have to follow as many rules.
That's a good point.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I could be in this space with you forever and talk about pivoting because there are so many layers to that. And you really nailed the nail on the head when you said, like, I got so wrapped up in that identity of being a
Hmm.
flute professor. And that was me. I kid you not. It was like, I'm a flute professor. I'm a flute professor. Because when little me at 11, 13 years old was like, I'm going to be Dr. Heidi one day and I want to be a flute professor. And you're right. We get wrapped up into that identity for so long because, again, you obviously care and you're obviously passionate about, your degrees and your training and that job title. You become it, even though you haven't acquired that position yet. You become it because you're focused on that. And when that doesn't pan out, at least for me, I kind of like freaked out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I realized I was so wrapped up in flute professor and that salary and blank university and all those titles and all of those, everything, that when that doesn't pan out, then you're like, whoa, I need to take 10 steps back. Who am I? What am I doing? How do I want to contribute to the community? And you can lose sight of that just because you get so wrapped up into titles. And I think that's for any musician out there, right? Like, I am an orchestral flutist. I am a flutist. You know what I mean? And then
for sure.
To shed that and to let that go, you definitely have to grieve. You have to let that go. And you have to, again, I've said this, but not to sound like a broken record, but you really have to kind of be courageous. And like what you said, put on your big girl panties and be like, all right, that's not my title, but who else am I? Where does my identity lie?
Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like that we all choose the similar identity because people are celebrated when they do get these positions. It is kind of like the expected thing for us to want. And so as people who want to be pleasing to other people, it's really easy for us to assume that identity because that's the one that is really supported by professors or by, seen as a higher status. And so it's really easy for us to feel like we want to do that. It's just like that herd mentality, right? One person is safer to be in the herd than to be the lone wolf. And so I think that that's what's very attractive about it is because that identity is one that has certain status with it, shows that you know what you're talking about, that, that you're an expert in this field. And that's why we're chasing all of that for so long. And honestly, the hardest part, I think, when you do make this pivot is actually looking to see who you are and what you want in your life, rather than always feeding into this identity that you think you should want. And you think that, you'll be safe if you get that thing, but actually really, truly looking and seeing who you are and really, truly what you want. And sometimes it takes a while to be able to get to that point. Sometimes you have to go through a couple seasons before you can actually start seeing your true identity.
Oh, ain't that the truth? Oh my gosh. That is so true. I, for a long time, was fulfilling different titles, being a newbie musicpreneur, thinking that that's where I had to be or where I wanted to be. And then I would look into the space and go and look around me and go, wait a second, where am I? And they're like, okay, I got to do another little pivot again. And that's good, to go through. And this is something I tell my 360ers all the time is like that first initial huge pivot, right? Saying, okay, I'm going to say goodbye for now for, the traditional jobs and pivot into being my own boss or, a different field or, whatever. That first big pivot is actually a blessing in disguise, because then if you pivot into being a musicpreneur and deciding, okay, I'm going to build up my own flute studio, or I'm going to be a gigging flutist, or whatever title that is now, during that path or on that path, you're going to be making small pivots along the way. And you have to know those skills of how to be adaptable and flexible, because that pivoting element is never going to go away.
Yes, exactly. We're constantly evolving. I mean, every day I'm doing something or thinking something differently than I would have 5 years ago, So it kind of would be nice if we just had this thing that we figured out and we just keep doing the same thing, but it's never like that. Yeah. No matter what happens in life, it's always going to evolve.
What did they say? They say that change is the constant. Something like that, changes the constant. Anyways.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh, shoot. Well, I could be talking about pivoting with you probably for the next 2 hours because there's so many layers to this onion. But speaking of pivoting, let me pivot into our conversation into into something else. And that is you being a newbie flute teacher. You decided to make the pivot and now you're like, okay, I'm going to build up this flute studio. Oh, wait, no one really taught me how to do this. I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. So looking back, hindsight's a beautiful thing. Looking back, what was that, about 5 years ago now, give or take?
Well, I've been teaching privately for like 20 years. And so, but the last time I started my studio was about 6 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was
Mhm.
thinking. So
Yeah.
looking back at Katherine 6 years ago and seeing like the season that you went through as you're building up your studio, what was probably one of the biggest learning lessons, nuggets, gems, whatever you want to call it, that you're like, oh, wow, if I would have known this, fill in the blank, if I would have known this, my first year would have been so much easier, or you get the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as a new studio teacher, I was lucky because I had already built up 2 big studios before. So I already kind of knew what I was doing.
Okay.
But if I was like the very first time I had to kind of figure out how to do this, and looking back at all the lessons that I've learned, I would say that one of the biggest things that makes your life so much easier, if you can surround yourself with people who share a similar vision as you for music education. So let's say if you're going to teach in-person lessons and you want to teach in your community, which is what I really truly do. Online lessons are great also, and there's a way to do this online for sure. But you need to finding people who have a similar philosophy as you in their band program and their string program and their after school program, whatever, will make it so much easier and to recruit students, because the students have already been exposed to a philosophy that is similar to your own. And so that band director or orchestra teacher or whatever will have, once they meet you and you talk about what you do and who you are, which is marketing, by the way, and you talk to them about that, just being very true and open and honest about who you are and what you do, then that'll make it a no-brainer for them to recommend their students to go to you, because you're going to continue their work and you're going to continue nurturing their students in a similar way. And then you kind of form this collaborative relationship. So for example, when I started my last studio, like 6 years ago, I knew that there was a couple of band directors that if I could get in with them, that I knew that they had great reputations and that their philosophy was similar to mine, that I know that we could work really well together. I could support their programs and they would help me grow my studio. And so I had a phone call with one, and they already had a flute teacher at the high school. But she said, you know what, my husband is new at his middle school and he is looking for someone to teach flute. And so let me put you in contact with him. And I had one 10-minute phone call with him, and I got 8 students from him,
Wow.
just from having that one phone call and being able to talk to them very openly. Now, I think with one thing that a lot of private music teachers do is that they're really focused on their own education, their own background, their own performance history. And so it becomes very easy for people to just focus on those things. Now, don't get me wrong. It's important to have an education in music. It's important to be good at what you do. But when you're talking to other teachers, especially, the students come first, and how you can support that program and how you can work collaboratively for the sake of the program and for the students. That is the stuff that they want to hear about. They don't want to hear about how you soloed with whatever orchestra that one time on this piece that nobody knows or whatever. I'm sure that was a cool experience, but they want to hear more about how you can get more of their kids to have a cleaner sound, to play more in tune in the upper register, and that you speak their language and you know what they want. So I would
Exactly.
say, yeah, so I would say like just that one piece of finding those people that you can really establish an excellent relationship with, and that if you're filling your studio with their students and you're working collaboratively all the time.
I love that. Yeah, because if you lead with, I'm Dr. Heidi, I played internationally at these countries and da da da, they're like, that's great. I don't care. They
Yes.
really don't. They need, I mean, they do to a certain degree, because a lot of musicians and band directors and families are very kind and giving. But at the end of the day, it's like, how can you serve my child? How can you
Right.
serve our program? And that's so important. Like, I can show you, there's proof in the pudding. These are the results. These are the testimonials from my past students. This is what they've been able to achieve. And this is
Mhm.
how I can serve you. And leading with that heart of servitude is so huge, because if you can think of that win-win for yourself and the program and come from this very authentic, genuine place of like, hey, I'm here to be a support system and be a supportive teacher in your program, that's when band directors and parents eat that up. Hey, 360er. Are you a talented flute teacher Itching to start your own studio and share your passion with eager students? We understand that taking that first step can be intimidating, especially if you have just graduated, are unfamiliar with how to market yourself, or you've just moved to a new city. But fear not. We've got a game-changing solution just for you. Introducing the Music Teacher's Playbook program developed by the renowned Dr. Katherine Emeneth. Through this year-long program, you'll unlock the secrets to building a thriving flute studio no matter where you are. We know how you feel. The uncertainty, the doubt, the fear of the unknown. But countless flute teachers, just like you, have felt the same way and found their path to success through this transformative program. Dr. Emeneth has designed the Music Teacher's Playbook with your unique challenges in mind. It's a comprehensive guide that walks you through every aspect of starting and growing your flute studio. From creating your studio policy to recruiting new and inspiring students, this program covers it all. So if you're ready to take that leap of faith, join the hundreds of music teachers who have found their stride with the Music Teacher's Playbook. Embrace the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of aspiring musicians no matter where you are. Don't let the fear of starting over hold you back. It's time to unlock your true potential as a flute teacher. Schedule your call with Katherine to learn more about this game-changing program. The scheduling link is found in the show notes below. And please tell Katherine that Flute 360 sent you. The Music Teacher's Playbook, where your dreams become your reality.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because, really, truly, you just got to be you and talk about what you do, and how you want to help people. And if you're a new teacher, you might not know yet, and that's okay. But still be you and don't just rely on your credentials and everything. So, yeah, I think that's very important to have those authentic relationships and build those relationships with people in your community really, really well. So then you're good. And I've got, my pay-on teachers come over for dinner every Christmas holiday, and I treat them, and my husband cooks a fantastic meal, and they're my judges for my mock audition for my students. And, they even wanted to go with me to the MTNA Nationals to hear one of their students play in the final round. So we're all about the kids and supporting them and supporting each other. So if you can find those people, then it makes your life a lot easier.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you said something very interesting, and this is one of the soapboxes I get onto 360 all the time, and that's building genuine and authentic relationships. Mm-hmm. And you said something like, oh, well, that one phone call, I just picked up the phone and I got 8 students.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you and me both, we get it. Like, we know it's not always easy. And you said earlier, like, hey, I'm an introvert, right? It's not always easy to pick up that phone, but you did. And you're like, okay, that one relationship opened up this new door of opportunity where I was able to work with 8 new flute students. That's huge. That is huge. So the thing that I hear from 360ers, Katherine, is I don't even want to pick up that phone call, or I don't even want to make the phone call because, and this is very interesting to me, and I'm glad that my 360ers are very vulnerable and honest with me, because this thought doesn't even go through my mind. And they will share with me, I don't know what that band director is going to say, so I'm not going to pick up the phone. Or I don't know the outcome of that conversation, so why bother? And I'm like, exactly, you don't know what they're going to say. So wouldn't that be enough incentive or curiosity to get you to pick up the phone to be like, I'm curious how this is going to pan out, because it could either be a yes, no, maybe, you don't know. So take the initiative to, and I empathize. So I'm not sounding like I'm bashing anybody. I do empathize, but why not pick up the phone? Because you don't know, like, it could blow your socks off and you could just be like, oh, I was expecting 2 or 3 students and I got 10. Yeah. So can you comment on that? Because I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, for sure. So to be clear, it is scary to talk on the phone. It is terrifying to talk on the phone as an introvert or just as someone who's not used to, quote unquote, selling yourself. as musicians, we're all our own small business owners, and we're all selling ourselves, and we're selling our value, and we're selling the way that we can help and serve our community. So that is the same thing. So many people think that it's gross and it's icky and all of that, but really, truly, you're talking about what you love to do. That's all you're doing on these phone calls, right? So something I always say to my people who are in my program is a no is not a no until it's a no. So they get so irritated with me because I'm like, did you get a reply? They're like, no. It's like, okay, when are you going to email them again? And there's like, and then I check in again. Did you get a reply? No. Okay. When are you going to send them a Facebook message? And on and on and on. So yeah, it is scary to put yourself out there and to try to make these connections. But guess what, friends? The email is not going to ding and your phone is not going to ring unless you are proactive and that you are constantly making connections with people. It's very scary at first. And what I do with with the people that are in my program is we do mock phone calls. Like I am the band director or I'm the parent. And, we go through exactly how to do it so that you sound like you know what you're doing and you're comfortable. And we do it 3 or 4 times until we got it. And then once you've got it forever. And then that's all you have to do is keep having those conversations. So if you're just starting out and you're nervous about having these conversations with people, you need to do a little bit of legwork. First of all, you have to think from whoever you're talking to from their perspective. What do they need in a teacher? What problems can you solve? How can you solve those problems in a memorable way? If you're going to talk to them about doing long tones to solve flute tone, that's not memorable. You have to talk about something memorable of how you're going to solve that problem for them that will make you stand out. Because I can't tell you, even looking at private teachers' websites, I tell my folks in this program, like if I can copy and paste what's on your website and put it on any other private teacher's website, it's too general. You got to get specific so that your voice is really, truly being heard. So you make a list of all those things of the problems that you can solve for the person that you're going to talk to, whether it's a parent for a potential new student, or if it's a band director or whoever. And then you think about those things, and then you practice talking out loud about those specific things. And you talk about yourself, and you think about questions that you want to ask them and about their program. And you just do that until you start feeling comfortable doing it. And then you pick up the phone and make that call and learn from it.
Yeah, I love that. And learn from it. And that's a key element because that first phone call may not go according to plan. And you may feel like a deer with wobbly legs, right? But the more you do it, just like anything, scales, arpeggios, rep, the more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you'll get at it. And with that too, like that skill will be honed, communication, building relationships will be honed. And then as it's being built up, your confidence is going to start going through the roof.
Exactly.
And I tell my clients the exact same thing that you're talking about, whether it's a podcaster looking for corporate sponsorships or a client looking to build those relationships in different musical capacities. And one thing I have my people do is write out a list of value points. And I tell them to purge 40 things that you bring to the table. What is unique about you? What do you bring to the table that another podcaster doesn't? Not that it's a competition, but just a highlight, showcasing like, hey, for like a lesson studio teacher, perhaps one of the 40 value points for somebody could be like, well, my students have a very organized system with me, and I drop in unique recordings into their folder on a weekly basis. So that way they can hear really good flute tone throughout the week outside of our 30-minute lesson. It could be something like that, right? But if you write it out and then you kind of ground yourself in like, oh, this is who I am. These are the unique skill sets that I bring to the table. Then when you pick up the phone, you can highlight those things and weave it into the conversation.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because with the folks that I work with, when we start this thing about what makes you unique, they're like, I don't know. I just teach music. I don't know what makes me unique. I'm like, okay, no. Give me some things, that students love about you. And if you're nervous, just ask your students next week, like, what are things that you love about lessons? And they will tell you. And
Mm.
those are the exact things that are memorable about you that you have to weave in. And it could even be that you have a gigantic fluffy dog, or that you have, special studio parties that you have for your students or whatever. But just being aware that those tiny small things that you do are the things that do set you apart, that make you unique and memorable, much more so than teaching tone through long tones.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So you've already highlighted an element of recruitment, and one way to do that is to pick up the phone. So I get these questions a lot through the 360 world about like, hey, I want to recruit more students into my studio, but I don't know where to start. I live in a rural state. I just moved, and it sounded like you had restarted your studio a few different times, right? Because you
Yeah.
had to move and things like that. So these are pain points for 360ers of like, hey, I just moved. I had to pick up and move from Texas to California. I had to totally start all over again. I feel like recruiting students now, 10 years later, here in 2020 plus, is a lot different than it was in the early 2000s. So can you talk about maybe another like recruitment trick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I think that a lot of our tried and true methods are still hold lots of value. So,
Okay.
making your gigantic list, if you're teaching locally, of the 200 band directors within a 10-mile radius of where you're teaching, and noticing and actually doing some research and seeing from their band websites, like, what do they value? What are things that are their philosophies similar to yours? And kind of, you can usually tell.
Mm.
Or, do some online lurking on Facebook and go onto people's profiles and see if you have a common thread with them, finding something that's in there. Looking at your local flute organizations, your flute clubs or associations that you could dial into, and just starting to grow your network and getting a sense of who is there. And then obviously emailing band directors is another great way to do it, as long as it's not the, hi, my name is Dr. Katherine Emeneth. I have a doctorate degree from the University of Washington. I played with this orchestra and this orchestra and this orchestra, and hair flip here, hair flip there. And
I
they
love the
don't,
hair flip.
yeah, they don't have time to read that. So
Mhm.
you got to get down to the nitty gritty of things that you're going to be able to help them and their students with, to get in the door, to make that introduction. And what most private teachers do with, offering to give free sectionals, which is great, is they go in and talk a lot about their background and their history. And I've done that before too. But you want to try to make a real connection with students when you're in there in front of them. You want them leaving that sectional room telling their band director, oh my gosh, please have Dr. E come back again and again and again. Like, that was so much fun. Like, I love that. When is she coming back again? So from the students, because guess what, friends? The band teachers will ask the kids how they liked you. This is a thing that they do. Okay. I've seen it happen numerous times. So they're testing you out just as much as you're trying to make a connection with them. So you have to make a splash, and you have to make sure that in that sectional that you're doing things that are fun for the kids, that is in their world, that they can relate to, that's going to ignite them to want to get better at music and to have, lessons with you, if that's the thing that you're trying to do. So it's not just the email, and it's not just like sending multiple emails and keeping up with it and tracking it and, still being polite with your follow-ups and all that. But once you do get the foot in the door, that doesn't mean that a sectional is going to fill your studio. It's how you do the sectional and how you do
Mm.
the follow-ups that will help get those students in the door for you. So networking with your people, figuring out how you can serve them in a very, very authentic way is huge. Another big one is your website. That is your digital real estate. That is your
Mhm.
home base. And your website is very important that it looks professional, but it's also that it's 1,000% you. And honestly, when
Mm.
I built my studio in Seattle, my website is the thing that made it me grow. It was not going out and doing sectionals with band teachers and with band students. It was totally through my website, because when you typed in flute lessons in Seattle, my website had a picture of my easy button, my fluffy dog, my gigantic studio bear. It had students dressed up in Halloween costumes playing Halloween recitals. It had all of these different real life pictures of kids. And I wrote in a way that parents and kids could relate to. I did not use words like repertoire. Like a non-musician is not going to know what the heck that word means, but they sure as goodness are going to know what the word slay means, you know? So writing in the voice of your target audience and people that you want, showing who you are and what you do with your music education and the types of students that you work with on your website. So when I asked my students and their families why they chose me, they just said, I could tell exactly who you were from your website. It was very specific, and I wanted my kid to be with you. And when you look at, and that's why that authentic voice is so important, not just listing your credentials and talking, fancy musician talk, but being down to earth, because that really helps people kind of self-select if they're going to be a good fit for your studio or not. So website is another huge one too.
I love that. And I loved what you said about the sectionals and you going in and making a splash. And that's smart because now the kids are kind of advocating for you to be the teacher and saying, hey, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Jones, you have got to hire Dr. E. And this way, like the selling is kind of already done for you. The kids are going gaga over, the activities they had done, the warm up that they had done, the energy and how you presented yourself and serving and leading and helping them, that they're going to be jumping up and down and saying, oh my gosh, we need Dr. E. And then you don't have to be like, hey, are you going to hire me? Hey, are you going to hire me? It's actually, it's very brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, why not? That's what you want. You want to be effective as a teacher. And so I remember this one time this past year, I started working with this new middle school, and I do like a secret handshake with the flute section that I teach them, especially for middle schoolers. And we always do that, like whenever anybody plays or like when I say hi or bye or whatever. So I walked into that band room with 200 kids. Band director said, and I was in the back of the room, and the band director said, Flute's Dr. E's here. And they all turned around to look at me with a big smile on their face and did their secret handshake to me. And that's like in front of the guy who is hiring you. That's what they want to see, is that you're supporting the students, that they're excited about you being there and that you already have a rapport with them. So, so that's why doing sectionals the right way and in a memorable way does all of your hard work for you.
I love that. Yeah. How cool. So if somebody is building out their studio, right, and they are doing some of these recruitment tips and tricks, not that they are tips and tricks, but you know what I mean. And they're going through it. I hear a lot of 360ers also mention that it does take time. And yes, it does. Like anything, Rome was not built in a day. So any advice to somebody who's saying like, yes, I understand it takes time, but I'm having a really difficult time enduring this season, building up the studio and finding the patience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating to be trying very hard and putting yourself out there and doing all the right things and not getting the traction that you think that you should have at this point. I've helped musicians build studios. Like one person in the program right now who started in March, she's already got 30 students for August, right? So that happened for her really fast. Some people started same time as her. They don't have a single student yet because of whatever reason, But the important thing is that you keep trying and that you don't give up. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you are literally building a business. Most of the time what happens is you'll find this one little thread that if you keep pulling it, you're going to get more and more students from doing that thing. For me in Seattle, it was my website. That was the thing that was the game changer for me. This last time that I established a studio here in the Atlanta area, it was through my network and my reputation. And for some people, it's their online presence. For some people, it is, starting to be very strategic about posting in Facebook groups. So whatever, the important thing is when you're starting is you have to exhaust all of the different ways to recruit students before you give up. And it takes time and it takes patience for sure. And then once you start getting those students to come to you, then you start looking to see if you can find that trend. And once you find that trend, you
Mm.
double down on that one thing, that one source that keeps bringing you students. And that could be a school program, it could be a school district, it could be a website, it could be whatever. But that's the thing that's bringing you those students. And then once you start doing that, especially if you're teaching locally and not online, you build your reputation and you show your work on social media about what you're doing with your students. And that then will start selling itself for you, for people to refer students to you, because they see what you're doing. They see what the value you're providing to those kids. And then it just keeps going from there. So if you're starting and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, why am I not getting a single student? I must suck. I should practice more. By the way, that has nothing to do with it. The practicing more does not have anything to do with recruiting students. Most of the time it comes through your personality and how you teach and how you relate to people. That is how recruiting helps you. Having a gold flute is super helpful too, because the kids love it. But things like that. It's not all just in your performance. So if it's going super slow, you have to take a look and see, are you actually doing everything you can? That's usually the first question I ask people. And I will say, when was the last time you sent an email out asking about coming in for a sectional? And they'll have to look, be like 6 months ago. It's like, okay, so it needs to be 6 days ago, right? So you have to keep being the squeaky wheel, because people are so used to getting so much communication that a lot of it falls away. They don't see it or whatever. So you have to stay after it and not associate a non-reply with a no. A no is not a no until it's a no. So you never know what is going on in people's lives of why they're not replying to you. So, you have to be persistent with it, persistent and consistent, and trying all of the different things that that are available to try to recruit students, and then just keep going.
No, I couldn't agree more. And what I say a lot of times is the fortune is in the follow-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No one's going to, we get inundated with thousands of emails in the day or the week. And think about band directors. They probably get 2,000 emails in the week, because between the admin and parents and other colleagues, their inbox is so full.
Exactly.
And you never know. And a lot of people, I think, and I don't blame them, but I think a lot of people kind of like shy away when they're like, okay, I put on my big girl panties and I sent out that email and I sent out that, voice message, and that in of itself was scary enough. Mm-hmm. And now that person's not responding to me. Mm-hmm. It must mean, then they put, then there's like this hypothetical conversation that's going on in their head and going like, oh, well, they didn't like the email, or they didn't get a good sense of me, or it is a no. And then they jump to all these conclusions and assumptions. And maybe it boils down to they just didn't even open the email, or they didn't have the time to read it. And so then we kind of sabotage ourselves and say, oh, well, that was scary enough. I didn't get a reply, so I'm just going to walk the other way and not try again, because, why bother? And it's like, no, the fortune is in the follow-up. You got to keep going until you get that no. And sometimes too, and I bet you will agree with this and correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes that no in that particular season doesn't mean that it's necessarily a permanent no.
Oh yeah.
I've heard so many no's in specific seasons of my life, where maybe a year or 2 years later, somebody will follow up with me and say, you know what? At that time, it wasn't a good fit, but are you interested? We're interested in you now for da-da-da. And it's like, oh, that's so cool. So a lot of my no's throughout my career has actually panned out to a yes, but maybe it's 6, 12, 18 months later.
Yeah, totally. And you remember that band director that I mentioned with the phone call, who already had a flute teacher, but referred me to their husband? Well, it turns out that they fired the flute teacher that they were working with because they weren't happy with her results and all that. And they hired me, you know? So like, that was just like a year later. And then another thing with that happened too is, was chasing down all of these university positions for so many years. And then last summer I got a call with somebody asking me to be the new professor at this university, and that fell in my lap too. And I said no to that one because the pay wasn't as good as what I do for teaching privately and doing my online stuff. And that was super crazy. So yeah, you just have to keep going. And the more, and, you know, I've had people contact me or in my program later, like and they have records of how many times they sent band directors emails. Like I sent an email every 10 days for 10 months. And guess what? I never got a reply, but I, out of the blue, one day got an email asking for me to be the new flute sectional coach at their school because they just kept seeing my name pop up. They never did reply, but they just kept seeing my name. So you never know how those things will pan out for you, but you just have to keep going and not make it that they don't like you and not make it that you're not a good enough player or person. Just know that they're human. I mean, I don't reply immediately to all of my emails, you know, and I'm not judging people when they send me emails necessarily. And I honestly feel bad when I don't reply, you know, so they're probably in that same boat. And so just being patient and persistent and consistent and always polite.
I love that. And you're right. So 10 emails for, you know, the last 10 months, your name is coming up in their inbox feed constantly. And so your name is at the front of their mind, ready to go and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to hire Heidi because she was persistent and like kind of in a lovingly, not nagging, but in a very, such a persistent way. It almost kind of, and I think a lot of people, I'm having a second thought here, so I'm going to run with it. But maybe a lot of people don't do the 10 emails every week for 10 months because they don't want to see themselves as like a stalker.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Annoying. Yeah.
Or annoying, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there are ways to do it that, and I've had this happen to me before where people have contacted me over and over and over again. And in my brain, I was like, now it's not the right time. Now it's not the right time. But I never took the time to sit down and actually reply. Now it's not the right time. And so, you know, it wasn't ever a pester for me. It's like, oh, I need to get back to them. I need to get back to them to do this. And then some people's method of communication is just not email. You know, some people, they just don't reply to email. So I always make it a point to go to the Music Educators Conference and to like hunt down the people that I didn't get the reply for so I can at least introduce myself. And I did a session this past January and there was probably 300 band directors in the room. And I co-presented with two of my friends who are clarinet and saxophonist about like things to teach from the podium for woodwind pedagogy. And then people came up to me and was like, I've gotten your emails, and like people who have never replied to me before. And I'm so sorry I never replied to your email. They had great presentation, you know? And so when you can make that in-person connection, it goes a lot further and you get replies in the future because you do make that in-person connection. So as scary as it is to walk up to people and introduce yourself or to pick up that phone call and talk to people, really, really, truly, it is that human connection that has always brought the best and most consistent leads for recruiting students. So, yeah.
That is so cool how like full circle for you. It's like, oh, I got your emails.
Yeah.
Now you're here. Thank you for those emails. Yeah. No, and you're right. I truly believe in that human connection too. And so it's interesting. Maybe if you aren't the person, you feel like you're kind of like annoying somebody or harassing somebody with 10 emails for 10 months, mix it up. Maybe send an audiogram through a Facebook DM. Maybe pick up the phone, maybe send out an email and say, you're invited to a Zoom call or something to get them to like make that human connection of seeing your face, hearing your voice, watching your body language. And then they're going to connect that much faster because now it's not just black and white. If the black and white email hasn't worked, maybe, you know, show up to that band concert and afterwards congratulate the band director and say, what a stellar program. Your kiddos are killing it. By the way, I'm that person who's sending you 10 emails, you know, for the last 10 months and, you know, mix it up a little bit because if one medium isn't working for you the way you had anticipated, then you're going to have to maybe mix it up a little bit and get creative.
Exactly. Because not everybody's preferred method of communication is email. So it was actually very interesting and funny. Last week on a call, there was one of my program participants was getting a little bit frustrated because she had emailed this lady several times about collaborating and like coming and presenting like a string exploration class for littles at this kinder music place. And she was just super frustrated. She's like, you know, but the weird thing is she followed me on Instagram. And I was like, so is she very active on Instagram very frequently? Can you see the green dot? And she's like, yeah. I said, okay, you're going to write her a message right now. And so we typed out her message when we were on our group call. And within 2 minutes, the lady had replied.
I
And
love
so,
that.
yeah, so that was so cool that she got that instant thing. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out right now. I've been worrying about this lead so much. And that's all it took, was changing the method of communication. So you just you got to figure out that path of least resistance for people in communication to get that reply.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
So, one last question, and then I will stop picking your brain because I could be here for the next 5 hours, and that's
Hmm.
not fair to you. But specifically, online studios.
Hmm.
So, a lot of people also in the 360 world, they may be of an older generation, and maybe perhaps their health is failing and they can't be running around school to school. They want to kind of be hunkered down in their own studio and give those online lessons. So, with the same foundational elements that you've portrayed so beautifully today, I'm sure there's a lot of crossover into recruitment for your online flute studio. But is there
Yeah.
anything really specific that may be different or a highlight that you want to offer in terms of advertising yourself and building up your online studio versus this in-person stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so a lot of folks are choosing to do the online method. And I think what you said was perfect about how you might be getting older, mobility issues, or things that you would just feel more comfortable teaching online. Some people love teaching online just to teach online. I would definitely say that if you're considering teaching online because it's easier and because you don't have to, that was in quotes, by the way, because it's easier in quotes, or because you don't have a teaching location, that I would definitely reconsider teaching in person. There are so many people that are happy to rent out a room for you in a local
Mhm.
community center, in a church, in a school, wherever, for you to teach in, because recruiting online is totally possible. But I find that it is a longer slog to get students that way. You have to, one method is to use social media. So that means you have to understand how to post attractively on social media and strategically on social media,
Mm.
which is something that, I have done and helped people build their online studios before too. And I can tell you there's a learning curve there. So you have to really figure out what's going to work. And just making a studio Facebook page is not it. By the way, a
Mhm.
lot of people think they can just make a studio Facebook page and that's their social media recruiting, and that's really truly not it. So having some big know-how of how to leverage social media so that you can grow that online studio is huge. So either working with a coach or taking some type of program online can definitely teach you that. So using social media is super helpful. Another avenue that you can use is some of the websites that are like third-party websites that are listing websites, where you
Mm.
can have your picture and your profile. And again, remember, when you write your profile, it doesn't need to lead with, "Hi, I got my doctorate from the University of Washington and I played with all of these orchestras and this is what I do." Everyone's is like that. Lead with something that's going to catch their attention and show who you are and what you do. And that's the thing that attracts students and parents to you. So you can use those for a while. They do take a commission usually off of your lesson rate, but that's okay, because you have to get started and you have to start figuring out if online is what you want and the
Mm.
best method of communicating and best method of recruiting for yourself. So using those listing sites can be helpful to give you a leg up. As always, with anything that you're doing online, beware of scams. I get scam emails all the time for people wanting the private lessons and all of that, and or playing at weddings, and it just
Mhm.
baffles me why scammers would pick on music teachers, and musicians. But when you're in that online space, you'll always have to be super aware of that. And then offering value, joining Facebook groups that have people that could potentially be interested in taking lessons, and not just constantly saying, "I'm accepting new students," but actually providing value and showing people that you know who you are and you know what you're talking about. And then when you say, "I have a couple spots in my online studio," then they're more likely to contact you after you've built up that rapport and everything. Obviously, testimonials on your website are great. Obviously, a click here to book a lesson now on your website is also really good. So there's different ways for sure of navigating all of those different things, but it does take a lot of strategy and it does take a lot of trial and error to learn what's going to work best for you.
Yeah, I love that. And specifically when you said, well, I built a studio Facebook page, that should do it. And the first thought that came to my mind was if you build it, a lot of people are under this impression of if I build it, they will come. And that
Yeah.
is so not true.
It is so not true. I mean, you have to engage, you have to
Yeah.
think about who you're following, you have to think about who you're commenting with, you have to think about your content, who your content is speaking to, what problems your content is solving for people. I mean, there's a whole thing that goes into it. Just having a studio Facebook page is not going to give you the leads that you're looking for. It takes a lot more than that. And also for ads too. Ads are like a whole nother thing. They can get
Yeah.
expensive really fast. And I recently worked with a coach on the ads thing. And they're like, okay, for the first 4 weeks, you have to spend at least $400 a week on your ads. So you have to, if you're going to spend that much money, you need to know what you're doing, and you need to work with
Mm.
someone who knows how those Facebook ads work. So I would, for somebody who's just new to this, and if you're not working with a coach or somebody who's a specialist in this, then, I would definitely steer clear of the ads until you have the
Mm.
time and energy to learn how to do it correctly.
No, that's really good advice. In
Hmm.
between like spending money for paid ads or the lesson site, that third party site where you can put up your information, like takelessons.com or something like
Hmm.
that, where that website takes a small fee, whether it's that, booking fee or the paid advertisement, that's okay because you have to spend money to make money. See
That's
it,
exactly right.
see it as an investment. Don't think like, oh, I'm wasting $100 on ads. I mean, if you do know what you're doing, like what Catherine said, oh, I'm wasting $100 on ads, or that takelessons.com, that's a arbitrary website. It could be anything, but
Hmm.
whatever that website is, oh, they're taking, 10% or whatever. See it as an investment,
Yeah.
and that's okay because if you want something built right, you're going to have to you're going to have to put money into it in order to see that ROI.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I always tell musicians, like, think of how much money you've spent on private lessons. That's an investment,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You're worried about $10 for one student who could bring you, $2,000
Thousands.
a year.
Yep.
That's a no-brainer. Like, don't be cheap on that. Don't be cheap on hiring a coach or taking a program that is going to help you get to that end goal a lot faster and a lot cheaper. Talk to people who are experts in these things that you're wanting to do, who know what they're doing to help guide you so that you're not spending time and energy and worrying about all these things about, oh, what do they think of me? And did I do it right? Work
Mm.
with people who can guide you and tell you for sure if you're doing it right or not. So yeah, you definitely have to invest, just like you've invested in your entire music education since you were like 11, right? Same thing here when you're a professional. It doesn't stop. It's just a different type of education.
Exactly. Ooh, I love that.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been weaving into this conversation and talking about the people who you help into your program. Can you tell the 360ers what that program is called and what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had mentioned earlier on in our conversation about my NFA presentation from 2013, new in town, and that I started like an online coaching program for private music teachers or musicians who wanted to build or revamp their private studio. So that has evolved 6 years later into my year-long coaching program for musicians called the Music Teacher Playbook. And it is really all inclusive. Something about me that you will find out, if we don't know already, is that I never half-ass anything. And it is kind of one of my things that my husband's like, you just need to not do so much all the time. And I'm like, no, I
It's
can't.
a
It's
it's
like,
a blessing and a curse.
exactly, exactly. So this is our program is a year-long program for private teachers, and it's literally everything I know about creating private studios laid out on a silver platter. That is why it's called the
Mm.
Playbook, because it is through all of the tried and true methods. We only take a certain amount of people, at certain times of year, and folks have to get on the phone with me. Surprise, surprise, to talk about themselves and their studio and their goals. For a couple reasons. Number one, I only want to work with people who are really ready to do this,
Mm.
because if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. This is not a quick and dirty solution. This is like changing your life, learning how to do it in a way so you can do it over and over and over again and just be successful at it no matter where you are or what you're doing.
Mm.
You're learning all of the super important frameworks for this. So I want to make sure you're the right fit for the program. Also, I'm really, truly into community. So I want to make sure that when we have our call that you're going to be a good fit for the community and the musicians that are already in that community. So, and we want to make sure that you're a good fit, that you feel good about it, and that you will be able to contribute to the community too. And finally, I just really want to make sure that I can help the people who I'm talking to. I am not a person who's just like, yeah, this is totally for you, and I just want your money, so be here, No, I don't do that. I really, truly want to make sure that it's a good investment for the person. So we do have a call to see if you're the right fit for it. And after that, what it basically is we have a whole bunch of pre-recorded modules that are done for you. There's like 67, I think, at this point, and they go through all the nitty-gritty stuff: how to create a studio policy, how to write an email, how to build your website, all of those things that you can work at your leisure. And so as your coach, when we have our onboarding call, we go through the different modules that you need to do first, what the goals are and the strategies are for what we're going to tackle first. And then you start working on that. And then we're always in communication. Like, my team and I will review emails. We'll make sure that they're coming off correctly, not just like this ivory tower musician with a hair flip, that they're really truly serving the community. We help with all the mock phone calls and everything, and help develop a script, literally anything and everything having to do with private studio development. Last week, we helped somebody design their business card, and it's super cute, and it's like a cello, and it's made out of wood. And so it like really stands out and is super cute. So we're full service as far as everything that goes into private studio building. We meet once a week for a mastermind call, and that's where we have some type of business training or personal development training about something at the beginning of it. And then we hear about how everybody's weeks are going and to help troubleshoot, help light fires under people if need be. And we're basically with you every step of the way for an entire year, because these things do take time, and we want to make sure that we get it and that we're giving everyone their best shot. So that is what the program is.
Cool. And what I hear as a fellow educator and as somebody in the past who's built up her studio, to have that accountability and support for a whole year, that's priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get into dips, you're going to get into valleys as you're building out your studio. You're going to hit some brick walls along the way. Everything's not going to be easy breezy, right? And for you to, once you hit those brick walls, for you to go, whoa, wait, I need help. Hey, Dr. E. Hey, Katherine, can you help me out? That's great to be able to have access to you and to your team during those moments.
Yeah. And really, truly the community too, because, everybody's bringing their different life experiences to the table, and offering their opinion, or we're looking at a homepage together and asking everyone, okay, what do you think? Okay, what do you think? What do you think? What should we change? Which font is hard to read? Or looking at a different scenario, and just having that support of being like, yeah, you were right, they were wrong. Or, that's super helpful and validating for people, because it is a hard thing to do, to put yourself out there all the time, which is required when you're starting to teach privately.
Yeah. And then when you hear of other members in your community like Jane and Joe saying, oh, I'm hitting the same brick wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you, as the participant into the program, you don't feel so alone. Then you're like, oh, wow, Jane and Joe are going through something similar. It's a thing, so how can we problem solve and figure this out together?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to have, the kind of individualized coaching, but also having the group community there of people who are doing the same thing and feeling supported by them too.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. Well, guys, Katherine has literally made this so easy for us. She actually has made a very specific 360 link where you can book that call with Katherine. And I know Katherine on a deeper level, the more and more we get to know each other, and I can safely say she does not bite. You can book that call, and you will be just blown away if you already aren't and haven't already been blown away by this hour conversation. She really leads with a heart of servitude, and she has a heart of gold, and she really wants to see you succeed. So this is the perfect time to actually make that call with Katherine, because this episode goes out mid-July and school starts mid-August. So if
Exactly.
you really want to revamp up and, set new goals for yourself for this upcoming academic 2023 year, book that call with Katherine to see if you are a good fit. And it doesn't hurt to just pick her brain and see if it's a win-win all the way around. It's going to give you insight. It's going to give you, and taking that action is going to give you clarity in working towards those new academic goals if that's something you want for your career and for your musical path. So that link is in the show notes. You can click it below and schedule that call. Is there anything, Katherine, as we are wrapping up this conversation, anything that you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, I would just say don't be scared. Like it's easier said than done for sure. But, just remembering that you should teach privately, not because it's quote unquote easy and that maybe other people have said, "Oh, you can just teach privately." You teach privately because you want to impact people in music. You want to create lifelong learners in music and develop their passion with them and be the teacher like we had, be that person, that mentor and that super cool person and really truly serve your community. So that is why we teach privately. And if that feels like you, then there is not a single reason why you can't do it and build your own studio of your dreams and really truly make a full-time income doing this thing. It can be done. It has been done many, many times, and it can be one of the best careers that you can choose as a musician.
I love that. Well, thank you, Katherine, for carving out time for us, and we really appreciate your expertise and your kindness today. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Heidi, and 360 Years.
Thank you for listening to the Flute 360 podcast. If you want to be a part of a flute community that you can call your own, please join me and other 360ers in our private Facebook group. Here, we hold discussions that matter to you, share our latest victories, and support each other through our musical endeavors. All you have to do is click the link below to join our private Facebook group called Flute 360 Family. See you there. Let's talk about flute.